Good evening, resident scary people. It's your resident ooky spooky girly Alexa back once again. I'm glad to see your faces. They mostly look human, I think. If there are aliens out there watching, could you let me know? I'd love to get my information straight from the source so get a good fact check with how much research I do into y'all's travels and visits to us humans. Or maybe we could collaborate and start up a proper museum for artifacts. Let me know. For those of us Earth folk out there, welcome to the top 5 unexplained real evidence that proves aliens have visited us. In 5th place, we have an alien body. Yep, kicking today off with a corpse. Go figure. Did y'all expect anything less? This tale takes place in Russia, and while I don't exactly recommend physically trying to travel there right now for, reasons, we shall take this trip virtually. Eugenia Popova, a Petrovna. I tried. City, first reported in 2011 that she had been keeping a frozen alien body in a refrigerator for a couple of years. Casually. I have so many questions. Did she keep it next to her food? Was it kept in a spare fridge? Did it smell, and what did it smell of? Allegedly, she found it next to her summer house, so I guess we can assume it was a fridge that wasn't used as much. On the original day that she discovered the body, Eugenia claimed that she was disturbed by a terrible noise that shook her from her sleep, describing it as deafening, screeching, and overpowering. She rushed outdoors and came across the boiling hot alien remains lying next to metal fragments. The creature was between 40 to 50 centimeters long, had a big head, mouth, and orbits, and was wearing a one-piece garment of some sort. Now, 2 days after going public with her story, Eugenia was visited by some people who confiscated the body for the purpose of investigation and, according to their words, took it to the Karelian Research Center of the Russian Academy of Sciences. However, employees of the research center who were interviewed later said they had never heard of this discovery. I'm sensing an all too familiar government cover-up here. How about you folks at home? Honestly, if the photos weren't as convincing as they are, I probably wouldn't have included it in today's list, but I just couldn't tear my eyes away from how strange it looks. What do you think it looks like? Let me know in the comments. In 4th place, we have a tale from Wendy's. Now, while I'm not accusing the creators of the Frosty of having alien knowledge, one of their Colorado locations happens to be the setting for our next encounter. Back in 1987, 16-year-old Jake Wells and his family were on a family trip to Texas from Washington and decided to stop at this fateful Wendy's for lunch, where Jake and his sister quickly grabbed a table for themselves to, escape the adults in the car and opted to people watch while they waited for their mom to grab food. Yeah, my brother and I probably would have done the same thing. Their table was approximately 3 feet away from 2 adults that appeared to be in their 40s or 50s. Jake and his sister Marissa immediately noticed weird vibes from this group, so they focused their observations on this family unit. The woman had long brown hair, was wearing a knee-length light tan trench coat, even though it was around 85 degrees out and in August. For those of us like myself who prefer their temperature in Celsius, that's around 29 degrees. Way too sticky icky for my liking, even if I was wearing a sundress, never mind a full leather coat. The man of the unit looked kind of plain, with short brown hair, no facial hair, and had on glasses that were way too big for his face. The kid was weirdly dressed in clothes that were not typical for the 80s, and had short, light brown hair. All 3 of them looked like they had never seen sunlight, being extremely pale with pale lips. Okay, I'm pale, I'm not an alien. Also, the trio had large, mesmerizing brown eyes. Even though our narrator admits to really staring, the group never looked at him or his sister directly. In the middle of the family's table sat 7 or 8 hamburgers, untouched, in their wrappers, along with 5 large fries and no drinks. The family was simply sitting there, staring at the food as if it made 0 sense to them. Jake's mom eventually dropped off food for Jake and his sister, which they rapidly dug into, and after 10 minutes had passed, and the family still hadn't touched their, pile. Eventually, the mom of the group said, "Do as they do. Unwrap the items and put it in your mouth. Blend in." At this point, Jake assumed they were possibly from another country, but the woman spoke perfect English without any sort of accent. Immediately after the command, all 3 members of the unit, at the exact same time, with precise matching mannerisms, began to unwrap a corner of a hamburger, but suddenly stopped mid-unwrap and acted like they were hearing something that Jake and his sister did not hear. Heads tilted, in unison, and paused for a few seconds. The woman said, clear as day, "We must go. The mothership is here. We must go now. We cannot miss it." Jake frantically looked around to see if anyone else was witnessing these events, with no success. Only him and his sister. He frantically signaled to his mom for help and rushed outside, dragging her by the arm as he explained his observations. They spotted the trio going around the back of the building and followed them, only to have them disappear completely once Jake and his mom rounded the corner. They searched everywhere, but to no avail. This event has bothered Jake in the back of his mind ever since, which is pretty fair. That's a lot of food and money to waste. And while I know a lot of magicians, that kind of disappearing act is genuinely impossible by human standards. In the middle of the pack, we have the original Roswell evidence. Yes, I know, I reference it all the time, but it's truly one of the best examples of alien proof that cannot be debunked as easily as some of the other older claims or more modern claims that have already been debunked. Rancher W.W. Mac Brazel had found wreckage on his property in Lincoln County, New Mexico, so a little bit north of Roswell, sometime between the middle of June and early July, describing it as rubber strips, tin foil, and thick paper. Now, this ranch had no phone, no radio, so Mac was completely unaware of the ongoing flying saucer craze, so he just gathered the debris and, pushed it under some brush, just wanted to kind of forget about it and goodbye. This wasn't the first instance of the flying disc spotting in the region, with several stories already being reported to the press that year. On July 5th, Mac drove into the nearby town of Corona, where he heard stories of silvery flying discs, and 2 days later, on July 7th, made the decision to unearth the wreckage and bring it to the sheriff's office in Roswell. The sheriff called in the Roswell Army Airfield, which assigned the matter to Major Jesse Marcel. Mac brought Major Marcel back to the debris site, and the two gathered up more pieces of rubber and tinfoil, with the Major taking the materials home. On July 8th, Public Information Officer for the Roswell Army, Walter Hott, issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Operations Group had recovered a flying disc near Roswell. On that same day, Major Marcel took the material to his base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, who reported the findings to General Roger Ramey at Fort Worth Army Airfield, WAF for short. General Ramey ordered the material be flown to Fort Worth immediately, leaving Marcel to board a crazy flight. As soon as Marcel brought the material to General Ramey's office, both Ramey and his chief of staff, Colonel Thomas Dubose, identified the material as pieces of a weather balloon kite. The weather officer on duty explained to reporters that ray wind devices were used at about 80 weather stations across the country. The balloons were attached to a 6-pointed reflective device that looked like a silver star. After launch, the balloon would expand with increasing altitude before bursting at around 60,000 feet, with pieces dispersing in their fall to the ground. After the initial newspaper reports of 1947, the Roswell incident faded from public attention for more than 30 years until the late 1970s, which brings us to February of 1978, when UFO researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Major Marcel, whose statements contradicted those that he made to the press in 1947, saying that, they wanted some comments from him, but he wasn't at liberty to do that, so he could just keep his mouth shut. And General Ramey is the one who discussed, everything to the newspapers, the newsman, what it was, and to just forget about it. It's nothing more than a weather observation balloon. Of course, they both knew differently. While he didn't elaborate on that statement, he did deny the popular theories at the time of any bodies being found near the debris. Dang. After United States congressional inquiries, the General Accounting Office launched an inquiry and directed the Office of the United States Secretary of the Air Force to conduct an internal investigation. A report released in 1994 concluded that the material recovered in 1947 was likely, keyword here, debris from Project Mogul, a military surveillance program employing high-altitude balloons and classified portions of an unclassified New York University project by atmospheric researchers. A scholarly consensus emerged concluding that the military had decided to conceal the true purpose of the crash device, allegedly nuclear test monitoring, and instead inform the public that the crash was of a weather balloon. The balloon had allegedly been launched from the Alamogordo Army Airfield a month earlier, carrying a radar reflector and classified Project Mogul sensors for experimental monitoring of Soviet nuclear testing. The Air Force reports were dismissed by UFO experts as being either disinformation or simply implausible, and I'm tempted to agree with them. What was going on? I'm pretty sure this was real. In second place, we have a car and UFO crash from Minnesota. While on patrol outside the small community of Stephen, Minnesota, at around 2 a.m. on August 27th of 1979, Officer Val Johnson noticed a bright object hovering above the road and decided to investigate a little closer. My common sense would usually tell me that that means time for bed, but you do you, pal. The UFO suddenly rocketed straight at his patrol car, killing the engine. The last thing Val remembered was light all around him and the sound of glass shattering. When he woke up, the strange object was gone, and he was blind and bruised, but able to radio for help. Fellow policemen soon arrived and found Johnson's 1977 Ford in a heck of a state. The windshield was splintered and smashed, there were dents in the hood, and both a headlight and the roof beacon were wrecked. The car's two radio antennae were bent, respectively at 45 and 90-degree angles. Val also stated that the car's clock and his wristwatch both stopped for 14 minutes and that he had been blacked out for 39 minutes. The doctor who attended to him described his sight injury as similar to welder burns, caused by extreme exposure to UV light. Thankfully, he eventually recovered his vision, and the patrol car, with the original damage intact, now stands in a museum in the Minnesota town of Warren. In first place, we have a videotape from Puerto Rico. We're traveling a little more forward in time from the last two tales, up to the year 1997, which happens to be the year I was born. Many visitors to the El Yunque rainforest, located in the eastern region of the island, have experienced encounters with UFOs and apparent alien creatures at the site. An interesting fact pertaining to the encounters is the fact that music, especially flute music, seems to attract the mysterious creatures in the forest. And that flute music seems to have been what caused the encounter of a very strange-looking creature with several young men in the area known as La Coca Waterfall in December of 1997. The group of guys included Benjamin Loreno, Danny Quinones, and two other buddies who had gone up to the sector where the La Coca Waterfall is located on Highway 191. They parked their car on the side of the road, and Benjamin took out a portable camcorder he had brought with him from the car. Their intention was to experience a UFO sighting and capture video evidence, as they were interested in the UFO matter, and the forest was a place where many UFO-related events had occurred. Late at night, they decided to meditate, and Danny began to play a flute, casually. Sounds like a lot of my musical theater fronts. Moments later, all of them heard something heavy fall to the ground from the high branches of a tree behind them. Looking at the group of trees from where the sound came from, they all saw a strange-looking creature that was trying to hide itself behind a tree and the undergrowth on the spot. On instinct, they all immediately ran to where the creature was, and Benjamin turned the camcorder on and began to film what was happening, helped by the light from the camera's lamp. He pointed the camera to where the creature was, and took video for several seconds, after which the creature ran away and was lost in the brush in the dark of the night. Excited, they examined the recording, and sure enough, the image of the mysterious figure appeared in the video. Depicted in it was an extremely thin, weird creature around 4 feet tall, with a gray-green hue skin that looked oily, humid, sort of shiny looking. And then even though everything happened really quickly, it could be seen that the creature had long, thin arms and that it walked on 2 legs. Quickly, it jumped from behind the undergrowth to the left side of the image on the camera, where it hid behind the trunk of a tree, but at the same time it looked out from behind said tree to observe the humans. One could see that the head of the creature was semi-triangular in shape, wide above and thin below, and that it had 2 very large dark eyes that were slanted and elongated upwards. At one point, perhaps due to the dim light from the camera's lamp disturbing its vision, the creature opened and closed its eyes, and that's when one could see that it seemed to have 2 different sets of membrane-looking eyelids, one that opened and closed sideways, and another that opened and closed up and down. Moments later, the creature disappeared quickly, running through the dense vegetation at the site. The video has since been shown to several veterinarians and biologists in Puerto Rico, and none of them could identify what type of animal species the creature in the image could belong to. And that brings us to the end of our list, and more proof in my book that aliens have to be real. Honest to goodness, with all this evidence and thousands of new spawnings each year, how can they not? Be sure to let me know in the comments what y'all think, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos.